Hello, my name is Bob Condon. I'm the worldwide sales leader for Storwize for IBM Storage and Technology Group. This short video is a demonstration of how to do a Storwize Whiteboard presentation. This is a second part of a two-part video series. The other video that I recorded was how to use this whiteboard presentation as part of an overall Storwize sales play or sales strategy. The whiteboard presentation itself, in this case I'm using PowerPoint slides because it's easier to present, really just consists of two slides. What I would suggest to sellers is to print these out, use these as a guide, but do it as a whiteboard presentation. You'll be able to engage your customer, become much more interactive, get them involved in the conversation, and basically differentiate yourself by coming across as a much more consultative sales professional, not like our competition just using PowerPoint slides. Okay, so let's start the Storwize whiteboard presentation. I would start by saying that Storwize is by far the most competitive and value-added mid-range storage solution in the industry. However, there are a lot of features and capabilities of Storwize, and what we don't want to do necessarily is just come up with a list of features and then get into a feature-by-feature comparison. So the idea of this is to focus this down to three core capabilities and get the customer to agree to that and buy into the value proposition for those three core features, and then expand beyond that and say, okay, the rest of all of the features of Storwize are also certainly important, but they all support those three core features. So it's important to position all of these together. If you allow the customer or the competition to break them apart, then I think that in that case we open ourselves up to competition. I'll give you an example. If one of these is real-time compression and we allow them to break it apart, then the competitor can say, oh well, we have dedupe, and so that's an option. But if you keep them all together, it enhances the value to the customer and maintains our unique value prop and differentiators. So the first of these is virtualization. And what I would say with this is that Storwize today supports virtualizing about 300 different storage platforms. That's more than anybody else in the industry by far. Plus, we're able to support all those platforms on our entire product family. Other companies that do have storage virtualization, it tends to be just at an enterprise or a higher level. The other thing I would say is that there are many customers today that bet their business on IBM storage virtualization and have done so for 10 years. Just as an example, a proof point of this is that I've learned that the 9 out of the top 20 banks in Europe use IBM storage virtualization. So think about it this way. If all these companies are using IBM storage virtualization, or Spectrum virtualize, if you will, right? And they like it so much that they wouldn't be able to run their business without it, why isn't every customer not virtualizing their storage using IBM storage or Spectrum virtualize technology in any different form? That could be in different solutions provided by IBM as part of the Storwize family. So that's kind of the goal of this, if you will. Now, if I were to try to quantify the benefits of virtualization, in this case, and you'll see on the second slide, it'll provide more of the details on this, but I'm making an assumption. I'm assuming that we're selling a 100 terabyte V7000 solution and that the customer has 50 terabytes existing on their floor. That could be of any vendor's product. In this case, what I'm doing is saying that I can quantify the value of the virtualization given these assumptions at $60,000. And that's broken out as follows. Increase utilization, so if they have 50 terabytes, and we can pool that and increase your utilization by 25%, and then further I assume that the replacement cost for that tier, which I would consider an archive tier, is $800 per terabyte, then the value of increasing their utilization is $10,000. In addition, if we have 50 terabytes and we would have to migrate that, or in this case virtualize and assimilate it as part of Storwize, then an industry standard for migration without using Storwize virtualization is $1,000 per terabyte. So if they have 50 terabytes and they were to buy a competitive product, the cost of that to do that migration would be about $50,000. The next piece of the puzzle, if you will, or what I refer to as the three-legged stool, is easy tier. So the idea of this is easy tier is that cruise control, right? Easy tier was actually developed by the same team that developed IBM Watson. That's pretty notable. There aren't any other competitors that can make that kind of claim. Easy tier understands an application's data pattern, and every application has a data pattern, and then it moves the data around to the right level within a hybrid array, flash, high-performance disk, archive disk, at the right place at the right time, so that it both maximizes performance and lowers cost. Now, an interesting data point here is that Cisco actually validated our design, V7000, as part of the Cisco Validated Design, or CVD, for VersaStack. They were blown away by our real-time compression capabilities. And by the way, keep in mind, these are the same people that test our competitors' products, so they know what NetApp is able to do, they know what VNX is able to do, and they were amazed by the capabilities of IBM, not only easy tier, but also real-time compression. So if I were to put a value in easy tier, the value I come up with using those same assumptions is $242,000. Well, how do I do that? Well, I compare it to Pure Storage. Now, in this case, it's an all-flash array, and Pure Storage, the cost per terabyte is about $12,000 per terabyte. But I'm assuming with optimization and discounting, I'm going to bring that down to about $3,000 per terabyte, which I think is pretty reasonable. So $3,000 per terabyte times 100 terabytes, $300,000. The cost of the V7000 hybrid solution equal, not completely equal, but close, is $58,000. So the difference is $242,000. Now you could say, well, that's not a fair comparison, Bob, because you're comparing a hybrid array to an all-flash array. Well, that's true. However, that's the value of a hybrid array, right? If it's hybrid, you're moving the data around to the right place at the right time. You're taking advantage of the different storage technologies to deliver a balance. Good performance, maybe 3 to 4 times what you might see with just disk, but at a great price. So it may not be an entirely fair comparison, but think about it. If the customer doesn't need all flash, if they can achieve the same kind of results with a hybrid array, then the savings is perfectly reasonable to compare. And by the way, if they do need an all-flash array, why would they look at Pure Storage, which is just a disk controller with SSDs? Really not any different from that perspective from a V7000. Why wouldn't they look at a V9000 with IBM's flash systems technology, which is purpose-built, everything done in firmware, extremely low latency, really enterprise class. A completely differentiated product than Pure Storage. The last one is real-time compression of the 3 different features to focus on. So real-time compression is definitely a unique capability of Storwize and of IBM, right? In fact, IBM has invested 6 years and has 60 patents on real-time compression. Now, the fact is that most data center applications, Oracle, SAP, analytics, benefit by compression and thin provisioning, not so much dedupe. So real-time compression actually delivers a lot of value and covers probably 98% of data center applications. The difference is that we can compress the data with no performance degradation, and in some cases the performance actually gets better. So what does that mean? That means you can buy less and do more. So if I want to quantify that, here's how I quantify it. I assume that if I can do a 5-to-1 compression ratio, now that's very aggressive, I agree, but we can do that, and we can actually even guarantee that. So a good example of 5-to-1 would be like an Oracle database as an example. Then basically I can get 5 times as much data in 1 times as much storage. So my savings is 4 times the value of the V7000 hybrid array, or $232,000. Now at this point I would stop and get the customer to buy into this. These are the 3 key differentiators altogether. If you think about this in terms of a customer buying a V7000 hybrid array and virtualizing their existing storage and improving the performance and optimizing it and making it easier to manage. These are the three key functions. This is what you want the customer to base their buying decision on, because there's a lot of value, as we've tried to demonstrate here, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in 1 minute. But the other thing is nobody else can provide this kind of value, only IBM. So the next step to this is the customer could say, well, that's great, but what about other features, right? What about other enterprise capabilities and other things that are important to us? Well, one of those is integrated infrastructure. Well, IBM with Storwize is able to actually deliver two options for integrated infrastructure. One, VersaStack, which is our x86 integrated infrastructure, teaming with Cisco, who is really the dominant force in x86 converged infrastructure solutions. The other is Pure Power. So we can deliver an integrated infrastructure solution with Pure Power, which is a very unique capability to the market that only IBM can deliver. Now, the value of integrated infrastructure, in my opinion, is to reduce time to market and complexity and allow the customer to be able to also manage their integrated or their infrastructure with less resources. So in the case of an integrated infrastructure, if we're able to deliver a turnkey solution as opposed to the customer being their own integrator, then they save time, they save money, and their job of managing their infrastructure is easier. And Storwize adds value to both VersaStack and Pure Power that no other integrated infrastructure can match. The next one I would use is point to is scale out. Storwize has the capability to scale out. So in the case of a V7000, we can scale out to 4 controllers or 8 nodes. That's real value. Some of our competitors haven't even thought about scaling out, and this allows us to be able to not create islands of storage, like in the case of a NetApp or a VNX, but to actually create one pool of storage and actually do load balancing across this. This is a great enterprise feature of Storwize, and it's all contained within all of the other benefits that we're talking about. The next one is HyperSwap. So HyperSwap is a new feature with firmware release 7.5. The way I look at HyperSwap, it's the ability to be able to deliver really a tier 1 function at a remote office, branch office, or departmental price solution, right? So the idea of this is it's really a metro cluster. So you can have 2 copies of the data at 2 locations at the same time, updated synchronously, so you don't have high availability, you have true business continuity. Your solution never goes down. Now, if you were to marry this with VMware solution application as an example, then you do use SRM to fail over. Now, there's a lot of value to that because a customer's uptime or conversely their downtime is expensive. So if you can mitigate the risk of them ever going down by providing true business continuity, there's a lot of value to that. The next one is optimized replication. So in some cases, the customer might also want to replicate over a long distance just for disaster recovery purposes. In this case, they'd use IP as the protocol for that. Well, IBM with Storwize actually includes an integrated WAN optimization solution or technology. And that allows us to be able to optimize the replication over the IP link to the DR site. Now, you could compare this to other WAN optimization technologies which customers have bought, right? Without Storwize, they'd have to buy a box at each of their 2 locations, which would be expensive. Ours is included at no additional cost. Plus, the other thing that's important here is that it reduces both their RTO and RPO times. So recovery time objective and recovery point objective. And what that means is that it reduces their risk of downtime. Again, there's value to that. The next one is migration. We've already talked about migration probably a little bit in terms of one of the benefits of virtualization, but keep this in mind. Even if you don't buy all of the software features of Storwize, which you should, your customers always should, they do get 90 days of one-way virtualization for free just to do migration. If you compare that to the cost of migrating without Storwize at $1,000 per terabyte, there's huge value in just providing that ease of migration. And oh, by the way, their applications never need to go down. The next one is ease of use. We have an award-winning GUI. And it's the same GUI that would be available on not only v7000 but v5 and v9, right? And SVC, excuse me. Now the other option here is they could, with a VersaStack as an example, use UCS Director and manage the entire stack from one single pane of glass. The next one is spectrum control. I think this is interesting. I was meeting with a customer a few weeks back who was an MSP, and he couldn't say enough good things about spectrum control. The reason is that most of his cost came from labor, so he was able to use spectrum control as a tool to isolate performance problems, not just storage, but servers, networking, and improve his performance, the service he was delivering as integrated service infrastructure as a service to his customers. He was able to improve that performance by using spectrum control without spending a lot of time with his valuable resources, his people, to isolate that problem. So spectrum control is a huge advantage for us. And who else has that capability? No one, none of our competitors. The next one is unified. We offer a unified version of v7000 as well, and it's built on Spectrum Scale. Very unique technology. We're able to deliver both CIFS and NFS, but it's also a technology that is very scalable and has clear differentiation in the marketplace to more general purpose file solutions. Finally, I would say this. If you encapsulate all of these features, these are all available across an entire family of products, from v5000 to v7000 to v9000. Now, real-time compression is available on the v5000, but the bottom line to it is our entire Storwize family, including SVC, is all built on the same time-proven code. Nobody else has that kind of capability. So it really gives the customer not only a lot of value, as we've explained here in this presentation, but it also gives them choice, right? They can buy a v5000 at a very low price for a remote office branch office, a v7000 for a departmental location, or a v9000 for their tier 0 or tier 1. Finally, let me add up the cost savings. We've talked about virtualization, tiering, and RTC. If I total those, the value comes to about $534,000. But there's more to it than that. That's the CapEx savings, right? That's one time. You have to look at the value of those savings and reducing their need for capacity from a storage perspective over the total life cycle. So if you think about in terms of the total life cycle, 4 or 5 years, that data needs to be managed. You need to provide power and cooling. You need to back it up. You need to replicate it. There's cost to that. So the number I'm using here is a multiplier of 8 times the cost to buy the storage. In that case, the value comes to $4.3 million. Now, that might seem like a very large number, but if you're able to really deliver this kind of value and capability because we have a smarter storage solution, being Storwize, built on Spectrum Virtualize, then those are the types of savings customers can really use. So that's the end of the Storwize Whiteboard presentation. Again, what I would suggest is that sellers print this out and just use this as a guide. Finally, I'll go to the last slide, which is just to explain my assumptions. So in this case, just to review the assumptions, I'm assuming a new v7000 with 100 terabytes, existing storage of 50 terabytes. The average cost of that, replacing that existing storage, would be $800 per terabyte. In this case, I'm just assuming that it's a lower tier, so it's less expensive. Think in terms of nearline SaaS. The average cost for an all-flash pure storage, $3,000 per terabyte. The average cost per terabyte for the hybrid array, $580. And this is a combination of using easy tier with SSDs, with 15K drives, and with nearline SAS. The migration cost of $1,000 per terabyte, increased utilization due to virtualization 25%, an overall 60% discount, a compression ratio of 5:1, which is aggressive, but we can make deliver on that, and we can actually even guarantee it. And then finally, a total life cycle cost of 8 times. Now, the last comment I'll make is don't worry so much about the individual numbers. What's important here is that you get the customer to buy into the logic of the savings. If they disagree with you on any one of these numbers, that's fine. Just recalculate the savings using whatever number they choose to use. But the important point is, don't give up on the fact that we're delivering value with Storwize that nobody else can deliver, and it can be quantified so that it drops to the bottom line of the customer. And from a CFO, CIO perspective, that would be very important. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope this was useful. And again, this is part 2 of a two-part series.